This is the moment we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for years to get where we are right now. All right, Patriots, you know the score. The courts have spent decades ignoring or gutting our God-given right to keep and bear arms, and they're about to get a heavy dose of reality. This week, the United States Supreme Court quietly added not one, but two more huge Second Amendment cases to its conference docket for this Thursday. And that means we could be just weeks away from major cases that shake the very foundation of modern anti-gun laws. Buckle up, because if the Supreme Court plays this right, this could be a turning point for our rights. Stay tuned. Yesterday, the United States Supreme Court added two additional Second Amendment-related cases to this Thursday's SCOTUS conference. That brings the total to 5 major Second Amendment cases, as 3 were already lined up for discussion for this week. And if the justices grant certiorari, or other words, act on the case, we could soon see decisions on some of the most contested and consequential gun laws in the country. One of the big guns on the table, as I said it, no pun intended, but one of the big guns on the table is Duncan v. Bonta. It's a challenge to California's ban on large capacity magazines. Also is Gators custom gun versus Washington. Now, the Duncan case is not new. The case first arrived in the Supreme Court in 2022. At that time, the Supreme Court granted certiorari, vacated the lower court's decision, and remanded for reconsideration, GVR'd, after the landmark Supreme Court case, the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. Again, the text, history, tradition standard, right? Now, on remand, a district court Judge Roger T. St. Benitez, struck down the ban as unconstitutional. Again. But the Ninth Circuit reversed that, claiming that magazines are not arms protected by the Second Amendment. Here's the rub. If SCOTUS declines to take up Duncan this time, California's full ban goes into permanent effect, meaning owners of previously lawful large-capacity magazines, or the Freedom Week people, could be forced to modify, surrender, destroy, or permanently lose them. Personally, I don't think they don't take this case up. They took it up once already, said, California, get your act together and follow Bruin. Do it right this time. And California was just like, nah, bro, come at us. So I think the Supreme Court, I think Clarence Thomas is going to rip California to shreds on this one. That's my personal belief. You never know with the Supreme Court. Now, that same logic could be used to treat any detachable magazine firearm like a single shot, effectively gutting the foundational principle of modern semi-automatic firearms. Why this matters? Well, there are hundreds of millions of so-called large-capacity magazines in circulation. A decision upholding the ban or refusing review doesn't just affect California, it sends a wave of precedent nationwide, emboldening anti-gun states to go after mags, detachable magazine firearms, and even semi-automatics. So I think that they really addressed this case. Another case on SCOTUS's radar this week is Viramontes versus Cook County. And that's a challenge to Cook County, Illinois' ban on so-called assault weapons. The Seventh Circuit has already ruled that semi-automatic rifles like the AR-15 are essentially the same as military-style guns and therefore not protected under the Second Amendment. They openly reject the idea that commonly used modern sporting rifles deserve protection. Now, if SCOTUS takes this case seriously and applies the Bruin text, history, and tradition standard correctly, this could be the vehicle to strike down blanket bans on semi-automatic rifles. The takeaway here, a favorable ruling could restore rights to millions of law-abiding Americans who rely on semi-autos for sport, self-defense, and freedom, and render decades of assault weapon bans unconstitutional. Just like that. On top of mag bans and semi-automatic bans, SCOTUS added 2 more cases that challenge the federal prohibition on gun ownership by people convicted of certain crimes. even non-violent ones. Now, the cases are Vincent versus Bondi and United States versus Duarte. Now, these challenged 18 U.S.C. Section 922G1, the federal statute that strips firearm rights from anyone convicted of a crime punishable by more than 1 year in prison. This includes nonviolent felonies in many jurisdictions. Now, according to the petitioners and their supporters, many federal appellate circuits, including the 3rd, 5th, and 7th, now recognize that under the post-Bruin era, courts must evaluate such categorical bans on an as-applied basis, meaning you can't ban everybody from it. You have to look at each individual on a case-by-case basis. Look at the facts. Nonviolent versus violent crime, individual's history, danger to the public, not a blanket prohibition. Now, if SCOTUS takes one or both of these cases, we might see the end of automatic, lifetime gun ban punishments for people with old, nonviolent felony convictions. Why is this a big deal? I know immediately a lot of people get shut off when they hear that. Tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people across this country who lost their rights under 922G1 could see a path toward restoration. A favorable ruling here could put pressure on Congress to fix federal gun ban laws. Doubt that actually happens, but could put pressure on them. I mean, Congress doesn't get anything done anymore. They're just a bunch of high-paid hacks that are really, really lucky in the stock market. Or at least they could limit the scope in line with our constitutional rights. We'll see. But since the 2022 Bruin decision, the Supreme Court has instructed courts to decide gun right cases under a text, history, and tradition framework, not interest balancing. That standard dramatically changes the legal terrain for magazine bans, semi-automatic bans, and even felon gun bans. With five major 2A cases now on the conference docket for this Thursday, you got a couple magazine ban cases, a semi-automatic ban case, and 2 prohibited person cases. SCOTUS could, over the next 6 to 12 months, set sweeping precedent that reshapes the Second Amendment landscape in America. For gun owners, enthusiasts, and patriots, this isn't just legal stuff. This could be the last, best chance to cement a broad, unambiguous right to keep and bear arms, immune from the whims of anti-gun judges, bureaucrats, and politicians. Folks, this is the moment we have been waiting for. We've been waiting for these cases to work their way to the system, and now they are before the High Court. SCOTUS is actively looking at these cases. And Thursday, they'll start their conference on them. That means in the coming months, the door could swing wide open for constitutional carry, the return of millions of magazines and semi-automatics, and a real Second Amendment victory for the ages. But it's not automatic. We need to stay loud. Share this video, drop a comment, support groups fighting, not just litigating, for our rights. Contact your representatives. Get involved, because this may not be just a court fight. It might just be the 2A's final stand in the courts. But they're not taking our rights away, because we don't get them from them. If you believe in the right to keep and bear arms, and you believe our founders did not trust bureaucrats to decide when a man can carry an arm himself, or a woman can arm herself, subscribe to this channel now to stay in the know. Stay ready, stay armed, and stay free. My name is Jared. This was Guns and Gadgets. God bless you. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.